The Senate Finance Committee, so we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll have an invocation, but first here, Chairman's prerogative. See what we've got here up on the screen. Well, she's working on it. So I'm a new grandfather, first time grandfather as of last night. Everything went great. I'm not sure with the new redistricting, but I believe Sharon Cooper has a new constituent there in Marietta. And yeah, you might too. I don't know. So anyway, he and the mom come home tomorrow and everything is wonderful. And so I'm a much older guy now. I'm a grandfather. Looking forward to it.
You don't look a day older.
So now it's official, we call you grandpa?
Something like that, yeah. All right, I will ask the other Chuck on our committee who I share Gordon County with, the Calhoun area, to lead us in an invocation. You're number 5. Go ahead.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come today, Lord. We just thank you for all of our many blessings as always, Lord. We just ask you to bless us during this meeting, that our time and our service benefit you and serve you well. For to serve you is to serve the people of our state. We thank you and we ask you to, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, Chairman Mullis, I think you have the first bill up for hearing here today. And so this is going to be Senate Bill 497. And make sure I pull the right one out here. We've looked at a couple of things. So we'll be going off of LC number 432218. And go ahead and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for having me today. As you know, these are kind of Buckhead City issues that we're trying to improve and clean up and prepare for, and if we get to move forward in our projection of creating a new city. But this is regarding the hotel motel tax and also the Mercedes-Benz and the World Congress Center. There are a lot of indebtedness there, and Buckhead City wants to be a part of that and make sure they pay actually more than their fair share. So the Senate Bill 497 is a bill that will ensure that a state agency which collects portions of a tax known as a hotel motel tax will not have its revenue affected by the changes in a municipal boundary. This bill will require that a municipality will spend at least 50.4% of the amount of the local hotel motel tax collected at a rate of 7% since 1990 for the purpose of promoting tourism, conventions, and trade shows. This bill will require that municipalities will spend at least 32.14%. We went exact on all this, of the amount of the total tax collection of a rate of 7% after July 1st, 1990. And that's where the other one was established long ago, for the purpose of promoting tourism, conventions, and trade shows. These funds will also be used to support facilities used to conduct these conventions or trade shows, such as the World Congress Center. And lines 37 through 46 and lines 52 through 58 directly outline that any changes to the municipal boundaries made by the state will not disrupt or minimize the amount of this tax received by a state agency which receives these funds currently. It won't change any of that. The bill eventually ensures that the level of funding for the state agency is maintained at a level it was originally contracted for the initial contract, by its initial contract. The bill requires that a new municipality in the footprint of the original tax boundaries shall continue to levy this tax. Finally, the bill specifically says that the boundaries by which the tax is collected remain unchanged regardless of any change to the municipal boundaries. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions, and I have my expert witness, Bill Riley, with me. He'll take the easy questions. I'm here to answer the hard questions. You believe
All right,
that,
well,
don't
you
you?
talked about the World Congress
Yes.
Authority. And so in layman's term, what are you doing there?
Well, there are bonds that deal with that as well as Mercedes-Benz. We want to make sure that the new boundary would take care of their bonded indebtedness with that, and the boundaries would not affect the receiving or of those taxes.
Okay. Senator Gooch, what are you, number 11?
I think I understand what you're saying, but are you saying that we'll use the city of Buckhead for an example?
Just in case.
If the city of Buckhead were created, the existing hotel tax that's being collected in that area would continue to go to the city of Atlanta?
I don't think that's a Bill. Come and help me, Bill. Let me throw out my hook. Thank you.
All right, give us your name and address again.
Bill Riley, 70 Perimeter Center, East Dunwoody, Georgia. Senator, this bill was, I think the best way to put it is the Buckhead City group went to the World Congress Center. Folks, so the Georgia World Congress Center met with the CEO and met with the attorneys. And they came to them and said, we do not want to disrupt any funding stream. This bill was actually drafted by the attorneys for the Georgia World Congress Center, sent to Legislative Council, and was reviewed, and I believe later edited again by the World Congress Center attorneys and sent back. So they are satisfied that their funding stream will remain the same. The monies that would have gone to the city of Atlanta outside of the funding stream that pays off the World Congress Center would go to the new entity if that were to be created.
So the new city, in this case Buckhead, would keep the hotel motel tax that's collected in that new jurisdiction. But that portion that would have been paid to the World Congress Center would be forwarded to the World Congress.
Absolutely. But the World Congress
So you're
Center
basically
in
just
Merced,
making them whole.
absolutely. We went to them to do that to preemptively, so we would make sure that we did not affect adversely any of their bonds.
What's the law currently if this didn't go into effect?
Well, currently it just kept the catchment area is Atlanta, and it doesn't address that there could be two cities within this catchment area. I thought it was a fairly, I thought, brilliant way the lawyers at the World Congress Center did it, and they just circumscribed the area and said it doesn't matter what municipality is, this circumscribed area will continue to pay those taxes that would take care of the bonding and bonded indebtedness that is owed to the state.
Okay. Senator Albers, you had a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Bill and Chairman Mullis. Aside from the current example being used, would there be other examples this could potentially apply to if, let's say, Savannah or Marietta or someone else maybe annexed different areas or other type of annexation, de-annexations occurred?
I think that you would see, I would think that since these bills have all those separate subsections for all the different things, I think that you would see that the subsection, if it had the same problems that this potential thing does, they would draft it the same way. But I think that you would draft the subsection differently, because if you remember the bill, that it has a million subsections to take care of all the different situations across the state.
But
Thank
this bill is only for this particular situation.
Thank you.
That's right. And you could say that
Senator Jackson, do you want to speak? What's your number there? Okay.
Isn't it true, Mr. Chairman, that the Savannah, that the Savannah Chamber fall under the World Congress Center under the same umbrella, under the same board?
You know, I think you're correct, but I'm not the
Well,
expert on that.
yes,
And
sir.
that I know that they have a similar setup. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same or not.
The exact setup,
Okay.
the board of the World Congress Center controls the Savannah World Congress,
For-
Savannah's Congress
Convention
Center.
Center.
Right, our convention center.
Mhm.
So it has a direct effect on,
But does the state now own
the state owns it, sir. Yes, sir.
Savannah?
Yes, sir. So it has direct correlation with Savannah.
Well, if we move forward, Mr. Chair, we could always separate it somehow.
Okay.
Our intention to deal with the World Congress Center and Mercedes-Benz.
Well, that's why we're asking these questions today. Senator Redd, I believe you're next. I assume you're number 2.
I can be.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just trying to understand, will they continue to collect the taxes until that particular bond is retired, or who determines when they cut off the purse strings?
That's my understanding, but I'll let you.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chairman, it would. And to address Senator Jackson, the only way that this subsection would matter to Savannah would be if this subsection was already in effect as to Savannah. I don't know that it is or not, but I would have to find out about that.
Thank you, sir.
And I guess Savannah would have a de-annexation too, if that would make it happen,
No, they don't want that. They want
would be the case. Okay. All right. Senator Gooch, you had another
Just a
question?
Follow up. I may be incorrect. Senator Miller and I both were on the oversight committee for the World Congress Center board. I think Senator Miller may still be, but I don't think the Atlanta hotel motel tax pays any of the debt service for the facility in Savannah. I think it's only, this part would only pertain to the World Congress Center and the Mercedes-Benz. So I understand that the Savannah Convention Center may be under the umbrella, but it's mostly for bonding purposes. But Senator Miller, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of the Atlanta taxes go to the debt service for the Savannah facility at all.
All right. Other questions, Senator Orrock, number 4?
Mr. Chair, you have number 4. My question is to ask the author to point to the language that pins this down to the 2 facilities that we've been mentioning, Mercedes.
It's on the bill there because I don't have a copy.
So the language that the identifier language that connects us directly to the bond and indebtedness for that facility. Where's the language that
You can find it, if I'm not mistaken. If I may, Jim.
Yeah, what number are you? No, 1.
Line 68.
Get your mic if you would, so people can hear you.
I think if you look at line 68 and following,
Yes, we agree.
you have to do a little more explaining to me, for me to understand that.
And maybe even line 20 there, a facility owned and operated by a state authority for convention trade show
Yeah, it's gotta
purposes. I
be
mean, it
overall,
doesn't say it, but
And of course, if we move forward, the wisdom of the committee, we'd be glad to entertain whatever it does to make it clear for you.
I'm asking for where are the identifiers in the bill that pin it down? I'm sure they're here. You're telling us they're here. Just point them out to me that hone in on this specific facility that we've been.
Well, the
referencing.
information from 37 to 46 kind of pinpoints what we're talking about and where it would be according to the boundaries, which, but then again, the upper numbers that Senator Miller mentioned and also Senator Gooch talks about the convention and trade facilities.
all right. Senator Jones, your number, I believe that's 9, or maybe it's 10.
I believe on line 70 with the description of the property might answer your
thank you.
question. It's 1.3 million square feet and
Yeah, that's how. we do
and
it.
70,000 capacity seating. I don't think Savannah. I think that pretty clearly states what
Thank you for that, Senator Jones.
what that organization is.
Okay.
So,
And that's the old language.
the original language of this subsection is what you're.
Yeah, that's how they identified it, by doing it that way, which, Chickamauga turns out like the World Congress Center and Convention Center, but okay. That's how they do it.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And if not, anyone here in the audience that wanted to speak on this topic. All right, we've got some good questions to get with legislative council on. And we'll move on with the process if
All
you're
right,
good with that.
thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Yes, sir.
All right, our other bill today by Senator Robertson is a substitute to Senate Bill 516. We had a late sub today. And I think it's the 53S, LC 510153S that's one you guys are working off of. So if you want to present your bill or have some other people help you, I'm just,
Was here with me. Mr. Chairman, are you fine with me sitting here to present the bill?
sure, if you want to
Okay,
do that,
thank
that's
you.
fine.
Yes, sir. I'm not quite as healthy and as stealth as the last presenter, so. He's not in the room, is he? Okay, good. Yes, he is. Mr. Chair, I believe I'm working off of LC 510153S.
That's the one I've got, so.
Yes, sir. And committee, this is basically a bill intended to follow through on a constitutional amendment that was made by the citizens of Georgia here in the past couple of years related to tire abatement and the $1 fee that is currently being paid by the citizens of Georgia every time they turn a used tire in. And what we have attempted to do here was make sure that the money was being not only spent in accordance with the wishes of the citizens of Georgia, but also to make sure that this honor system that we're currently operating under for this dollar to be paid is being adhered to. And so what Senate Bill 516 basically does is we are creating an innovation grant, which would be the first 10% of the money collected out of the 90 that would be remaining. The spending of that 90% would be used according to the same profile based on the years 2018 through 2022 with what's going on with it now. And probably the biggest change we're making in this legislation, based on information we received, where anywhere between $3 to $5 million is being left uncollected through this honor system, is we are moving the collection from the retailer to the wholesaler. While working on this legislation, I had the opportunity to speak to many retailers, which in the state of Georgia, the estimated number of tire retailers go into the thousands of businesses. Many of them weren't sure if they were paying the $1. Some of them weren't sure how to pay the $1. And some weren't sure who to pay the $1 to. So even though EPD has done a great job in developing an online portal so that this $1 can be paid quarterly, we feel pretty certain that the $1 is not being collected anywhere near 100%. So collecting it from thousands of retailers seems to make less sense than collecting it from less than 100 wholesalers or distributors, if you will, here in the state of Georgia. And according to some of these, to let you know, out of the 90% that's left after the innovation grants, approximately 84% would be actually directed at tire abatement, because currently a portion of those funds are used to address abandoned landfills here in the state of Georgia, which are an issue, and litter abatement, in which a minuscule amount, I think 5% currently, is being used for litter abatement and other beautification type programs in municipalities. And also in this bill, we have our estimation will be about an 18-month transition period. And if you notice on line 69, we have not did anything with the sunset clause. I believe it's 69. We have not done anything with the sunset clause that the governor established in the original legislation. And we did have meetings with EPD. We had meetings with DOR, trying to figure out the best and most efficient way to collect these funds. The meetings were productive for the most part, and I asked for certain financials from EPD, and I got a notice today that I'm still awaiting those just to confirm exactly how much money they have been using since 2018 until today.
Okay. Let me back up before there's any questions and make a couple of statements. Number one, the original constitutional amendment that we put on, I was a Senate sponsor of, so I'm a little bit familiar with this process and had worked for it. Jay Powell, who is 3 chairmans back on the House Ways and Means Committee and unfortunately has passed away, was the one that started this whole process and did a lot of work on it. Number two, Blake Travis is our attorney here in finance. However, I believe this was drawn up by the natural resources attorney, which doesn't typically work with us. So I'm not gonna, I don't want to hold him to instant opinions on this bill since he didn't draft it. You know, that's gonna probably be some of the follow-up that we do. And then the third thing I was gonna say was that since we have a former transportation chair and I think a fuel tax payer over there, what's the method right now on the fuel taxes? At what level are those collected? So they're at the wholesaler. So this would be consistent in a way with what's going on with the fuel tax. One other thing I want to state is the Department of Revenue, I feel like in the last couple of years has done a great job, an improving job of collecting taxes that were owed. It's part of the reason our revenue is up. Data analytics and different methods are used in auditing have done a great job at that. However, in conversations, they weren't jumping up and down excited to take over this program. So I think this could possibly be a good alternative to limit it to less people, like you say. So with that, I know Senator Jackson, you had some questions, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, how many wholesalers or distributors are there in the state?
When I asked the industry leaders that, they said less than 100. That is a quote.
Okay, well, that would help tremendously in collecting their taxes, because it's a lot easier to go to a less than 100 than to go to more than 1,000.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say more than 1,000, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about, in some cases, I've had some people tell me they thought they were around 80,000 because these are mom and pop tire places and other tire stores, if you will. The ones I primarily spoke to were larger businesses. And they said that, you know, they were saying, to be completely honest with you, I don't know how we're paying this. Some of them were selling some of them were paying scrap companies to come pick the tires up under the assumption that the scrap company was paying the $1, but they could not show me on an invoice anything where a scrap company was saying they were paying the $1.
Is there any, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, is there any prediction of how much money we lost last year because of the lack of collecting?
The closest prediction I felt comfortable with was somewhere around $3 million left on the table. But as I dove deeper into this and looked at the number of retailers, as opposed to, like you said, Mr. Chairman, the number of distributors or wholesalers, I'd say that number could easily stretch up to $5 million.
I feel a lot more comfortable with this legislation now, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And another example, I guess I should say, is a marketplace facilitator. I was a little involved in that process too, a couple of years ago, that we, you know, the facilitator of that framework, whether it's Amazon or Walmart.com, or Google, whoever now is doing that job in a method that we couldn't go out and get millions of people to send in their 30 cents on their purchase or whatever. So I kind of agree with that too. Senator Gooch?
I think I like the first part of the bill without a question on the collection of the money. Makes sense. The second part of the bill that I think we need to hear more details about, is that something someone else is going to come forward about? Talking about innovative technologies for the grant program. Can you give us more details about what that consists of?
And Ally, if you want to come up at
Yeah.
this point and talk about that, Ally Kelly, tell us your name, address, who you represent.
And Mr. Chairman, I think you're talking about starting on line 17.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Ally Kelly. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization that operates out of LaGrange and West Point, Georgia, as well as Atlanta, Georgia. That organization is called the Ray. We work with Georgia DOT and the Federal Highway Administration, number one, on an 18-mile stretch of Interstate 85 on the western side of the state. So think about going to Auburn for a football game. So at the Georgia-Alabama line, to exit 18 LaGrange, we've established with GDOT a test bed for transportation technology and the interstate infrastructure space. We've developed more than a dozen projects. We've become the premier test bed in the country. And y'all may not know, but we're actually working projects in 25 states now. So the Ray has partnerships and a project pipeline in half of the United States. And we're Georgia grown. We're a Georgia-based organization that is really helping Georgia to lead in the area of transportation infrastructure, sustainability, and innovation. And we've done it with GDOT for the last 6 years. We're a practitioner, so we practice what we preach. And in 2017, we worked with Troup County's paving program to pave a 2-mile rubber modified asphalt new road to connect the Great Wolf Lodge Water Park with Pegasus Parkway, which is their existing industrial park roadway. 2 years later, in 2019, the Federal Highway Administration funded the paving of another mile of rubber modified asphalt on the interstate itself. In those two projects, which account for about 3 miles of paving, we were able to upcycle nearly 100,000 tons of scrap tire rubber. 3 miles, 100,000 tons of scrap tire rubber. Now, aside from that, which is cool math, let me tell you why you should care. We're working with a Georgia tire manufacturer to be on the cutting edge of research and development around the accelerated wear of tires on electric vehicles. This is a very early and nascent area of R&D, but our initial understanding is that electric vehicles wear through tires about twice as fast. So while you might be used to getting 60 or 65,000 miles out of a new set of tires, electric vehicles, on average, in this new area of research and development, we're finding that it's more like 30 to 35,000 miles on a new set of tires. You're all wondering why. Anybody want to take a guess? So I'm in the great position of being able to say, you're all right. Yes, batteries weigh a lot for electric vehicles, but if you actually take the differential of the weight of an EV and apply that weight to a gas-powered vehicle, you don't get the accelerated tire wear because it's much deeper. It's really about something cool called instant torque. And that is the nature of electric vehicles delivering power from motors directly to the wheel. It eats the tires. Also, when Allie gets behind the wheel of an electric vehicle, whether I mean to or not, I drive more aggressively. This is a generalized pattern of behavior. We accelerate faster because instant torque. And also, even though we have regenerative braking in an electric vehicle, we tend to brake more aggressively as well. So that just exacerbates the instant torque. I'm getting there. Okay.
Hey, if I could interrupt at one point, you started talking about this and Mo Thrash came into the room, his ears were burning or something.
Well, I said electric vehicles.
And so he had to join us,
Hey, Mo, come on up. No.
got his interest all of a sudden.
So let me tell you the last part of this, which is really interesting. So we're really concerned about range anxieties about range anxiety with electric vehicles, right? So that's something that we all wonder about as we think statewide about the practical, are electric vehicles practical? Well, when you are prioritizing range in the battery, the procurement of the tires for those vehicles are low rolling resistance tires, which means that the tires produce less resistance in order to get the same distance. And low rolling resistance tires are not engineered for durability. So the answer to the question is D, all of the above. And really the point at which the RAE becomes concerned about all of this is that I'm here to tell you that our scrap tire stream will not get smaller. Our scrap tire stream will grow as the adoption of electric vehicles grow in this state. Until we can do something about the 5 factors that are influencing and accelerating tire wear on electric vehicles. And is it possible to do that? We don't know yet. But for the time being, we have to anticipate a growing waste stream of scrap tires. And so this bill at its heart is really the question, when I collect $1 from Senator Hickman and I tell him it's for tires, should I turn around and spend it on tires? Right? And that is what this bill seeks to do. The 10% innovation grant, to get to your question, would provide reasonable grant assistance to local governments who are trying rubber modified asphalt for the first time. So we were able at the RAE as a nonprofit to help Troup County. They had a ton of questions, and there's also the risk, and there's also the cost of getting into something new. And we had to do, I think they would agree that we held their hand, and we tried to provide efficiencies and the increased cost of trying something new. At the innovation grant that you see in the first part of the second section really seeks to help county and city governments to manage the risk and manage the upfront cost of trying something new for the first or second time in a smaller project that also manages the risk. So you can't get into the economies of scale of larger projects if you want to try something new in a small project for the first time. And that's where the innovation grant seeks to go, is around rubber modified asphalt. But not just that, we can reuse rubber from scrap tires in stormwater infiltration galleries. We don't understand the chemistry of this and the dynamics fully, but the research shows us, the science shows us that rubber in stormwater infiltration galleries does a better job of cleaning metals and toxins out of stormwater. We need to understand more about that, but these are great reuse opportunities for a growing waste stream instead of landfilling all of these tires. It takes a tire about 80 to 100 years to break down. So as our waste stream increases, landfilling can be one of our choices, but it can't really be our only choice.
And part of the ability, Mr. Chairman, to do this is under 12.837.1, where the state is authorized to make grants as funds available to any county, municipality, and other groups to accomplish this. And the only unique thing we did in here is we added public schools in as far as workforce development and other things. We think it's important to involve young minds into our environment and to let them see the importance of these types of environmental issues. And currently right now, through my conversation with EPD, there are way too many tire piles around our state that have over 1,000 tires in them. And as you know, from a public safety standpoint, if these tires are not disposed and for some reason should catch fire, being petroleum products, these are one of those things that we're looking at weeks or months to extinguish something like this. So we think by having these innovative programs, we can expedite getting these tire piles taken care of.
So as I mentioned earlier, I was involved in the constitutional amendment, but then the next year, the enabling legislation, the governor's floor leaders wanted to do that and did that. So how would this affect what they did? What changes would that be to them, and have there been discussions over that?
I think really the only major change is as far as the collection point of the $1. if that's what you're alluding
As far as
to.
the ratio of where the money goes
Oh, no,
to.
the ratio would be based on what has already been done between 2018 and 2022. If I believe I'm correct on that. And that's where we were discussing earlier with the 5% that's currently being used for litter abatement, portion being used for abandoned landfills. Most of these abandoned landfills are inert landfills containing, construction products, other types of waste that people have used during certain development processes. And once they finish, they've kind of just left them there and left it to the state to take care of them, clean them up and manage them.
Okay.
And EPD does use time for that. And the few fines that they have placed against those individuals that could be used for that same purpose, I think the number I got is they've probably fined maybe 3, and those fines are ridiculously low. And I'm talking about less than $2,000.
All right. Let me take a break here unless there's any other questions and see who would see pitfalls or perhaps has some opposition with this bill. I think ACCG, the last I heard, was neutral on this or concerned or.
Which does not cause any tire wear.
Anyway, I guess just raise your hand if you would like to speak on this issue. Okay, I only see one that wants to speak on this issue too. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I'm not asking anymore. Well, they're going to stay there, but, and Kevin can go to the podium here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Perry. I'm with the Georgia Beverage Association. In addition to my role with the beverage industry, I serve on the board of the Georgia Recycling Coalition and the Keep Georgia Beautiful Foundation, which you're all familiar with the work that they do here in the state.
I thought, yeah, it's on. Says
my-
it's on.
I've discussed a lot of my concerns with Senator Robertson, and I'm happy to share them with you today. As you all know, the Solid Waste Trust Fund, which I was a part of helping to pass when it originally passed in 1996, was created not only to address scrap tires, but the Solid Waste Trust Fund was also to address illegal dumps, the removal and recycling of scrap tires, as well as litter abatement programs and statewide recycling grants and initiatives. Our concerns with 516 as it relates to the Solid Waste Trust Fund are several. First of all, it would drastically reduce the way that the specific funds are appropriated. Instead of giving EPD the discretion to use the funds as necessary, Section 2, specifically lines 23 to 29, would require about 84% of the funds collected to be used for scrap tires only. If you look, if y'all remember back before the constitutional amendment passed, the only money EPD was spending out of the Solid Waste Trust Fund was for scrap tire use only. They were not spending much money on litter cleanup or certainly not spending much money on statewide recycling initiatives. So this would really create a carve out to where 84% of those funds would only go to scrap tires only. And I think that sets a dangerous precedent. Number two, cities and counties have been looking for recycling education funds and certainly grant money for the past 12 years. For 12 years now, we have not been able to allocate any other funds from the Solid Waste Trust Fund to things other than scrap tires. So they have been waiting a long time for some recycling education, some investment in their recycling programs, and certainly in their litter abatement programs. And with that, I have no further comment.
Okay. So you're saying are you saying that it's just a change because of the bad period? You shouldn't be looking at those years because something's wrong there, just that it's a change from.
So if you own, the way the legislation is written, you only are looking at, you're directing the EPD director to look at fiscal year 2018 to 2022.
Mhm.
The only money that EPD has spent, to my knowledge, between fiscal year in that time period has been on scrap tire cleanement, scrap tire abatement. They haven't spent any money on litter cleanup because they haven't had the money. They haven't had the ability for the funds to be appropriate.
Mhm.
So 84% of the funds would go to scrap tire abatement only. It wouldn't go to the other cleanup of landfills. It wouldn't go to litter abatement programs or recycling education programs.
Okay. All right, we appreciate any questions of Kevin before he steps down from the committee.
Yeah, thank you for your testimony. As I understand it, I represent and work with some of the smaller cities in the South Fulton area that are not awash in revenues and very much hoping to have broader access, broader funding, because I mean, the situation that we were dealing with, isn't it true, is that in this period of time, monies were being transferred over to the general fund that had been raised for the solid waste trust fund,
That's correct.
but they were not there for the, in administering that fund. They lacked the resources to do much of anything except deal partially with this big scrap tire issue, but that the cities and towns couldn't get access for recycling programs, for litter, for landfill, these construction landfill, that needed to be addressed. So these numbers are artificially restricted because they weren't, I mean, the whole reason that we worked on that, Mr. Chairman, I know you were pivotal in it, but I know in my county, we worked to get the voters turned out to vote for Amendment 1. And that was because the monies weren't there to do the things that the Solid Waste Trust Fund was set up to do. So if you take a snapshot of that period of time, you're not going to get, you're going to get a very skewed impression because it's a percentage of the limited funds. And then taking that percentage then and applying it, as I understand, to that amendment meant that the funds stay for the solid waste.
Yes,
trust
ma'am.
fund.
And I would defer to the expert on this, Director Dunn. I'm certainly not the expert on the expenditures, but I know that there hasn't been the funds there. Yes, ma'am, to spend for those additional issues that were specifically laid out for the Solid Waste Trust Fund to address when it was created. in
Which were?
1996. Litter abatement, recycling education, illegal dumps and landfill cleanup, as
Right.
well as scrap tire recycling and removal.
So
Okay.
we'd be locking ourselves in with this language, wouldn't we, to this very high expenditure, on the scrap tire, because you've created a formula here that you've chosen that's a snapshot in time of when this fund was artificially suppressed. The dollars were going into our general fund. That's why you did the amendment. Is it not true?
We did that because we wanted them to go towards what the
To the
original
purposes for
legislation
which they were
was for.
collected. Exactly.
Okay,
And that's why I'm saying, I think that this formula in 9/23/29 puts us in a posture that we're still not going to have adequate monies for the illegal landfills, the cleanups and all the other things that are provided for in the trust fund, that language.
all right. Well, let's go ahead and hear from Commissioner Dunn now, if we could. And while you're getting up there, I want to say, the question is, have we collected all the revenue? And I think the answer is, you had the same issue that we had with Marketplace Facilitator, the same issue, if you didn't go to the wholesaler with fuel, that there's just too many people out there to keep up with. So I think this is a better method. I don't know if you agree or not, but it's,
We agree 100%. Rick Dunn, Director of Georgia Environmental Protection Division here in Atlanta. And Mr. Chairman, we've looked at our collection rate, and I will first off acknowledge that we are not in the revenue collection business. We do the best we absolutely can, and I can give you some estimates. I'm not sure how close, Senator, they'll confirm with what you've heard from industry, but we certainly do not collect 100%, but we can give you estimates from the number of replacement tires sold, how much we collect, how much we expect to collect, and give you that delta there. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
And I met with your people the other
Yeah.
day and yes. and
okay.
that was
Well,
good.
anyway,
Yeah.
we know.
But I acknowledge we're not in the
there's
revenue
whether
collection
it's you,
business. We do the
you're not in
best.
the revenue collection
Yeah.
business, but
Yeah.
even if you were, there's a challenge when you've got that many people out there that
Absolutely.
we've solved
Right.
in some other areas by
Right.
limiting the people that we
Yeah.
deal with. So,
And I don't want to repeat, I think the concern, and it's just a concern, Senator, that we have is we talked a lot about the authorized uses for the solid waste trust fund that laid out in law. And HB 511 took the fees collected from the replacement tire fee and dedicated those to the solid waste trust fund. And as we mentioned previously, in the past 10 years or so, we haven't had the funds to do a lot of those things that are authorized under the law. So my concern would be to kind of freeze us into those previous 4 years of expenditure category that would be limiting us. And we're going to have an increase of about 175% of the solid waste trust fund. I want to support Ally. I want to support innovative technologies. It may be more than 10%. I would just ask you to look at that section that kind of freezes us in terms of what we have to spend in particular categories. I think that would be heavily skewed towards past use of the solid waste trust fund. It would not reflect what we could do with increased appropriations. I hope that makes sense.
It does make sense. I
Okay.
understand what your concerns are. Okay, any questions from the committee of the commissioner here?
Just to drill down on this, what you're saying is that when the funds were being moved over to the general fund and used for other things that are not connected to the solid waste trust fund, you had a restricted amount of money.
Right.
And with that amount of money, and these years that are being looked at to create a formula are not representative of you did not have the resources to expend in these other areas.
That's correct. There's 9 authorized uses in the law. And because of the funding we receive, I had to prioritize, and we prioritized the scrap tire management program, as well as cleaning up abandoned scrap tire piles. But there's things authorized use, for example, a solid waste disposal facility that's releasing contaminants and the owner will not take responsibility. That's an authorized use for use the solid waste trust fund. But that's not something we spent money, thank goodness, on the past 4 years, but it may have to be used in the future. And I was afraid the language may limit us. That's just one example.
Because scrap tires is one of 9
Correct.
purposes for the fund.
Correct.
We'd be locking in
Right.
artificially.
Now, I want to be clear. I think I'm excited that we can use the fund for what it's authorized to use on innovative technologies, and we plan to do so. I'm just a little concerned about locking us into specific percentages.
Okay, any other questions
Thank you.
from the committee? And we appreciate your
Thank you.
testimony. This goes for, I mean, super speeder was going to trauma as an example. This goes to a lot of things. This is what we're trying to do, is say the money that the government was collecting is supposed to be used for what it was supposed to be used for and not siphoned off. Now, our past appropriations chairs would say, well, Chuck, you weren't here when we were down to one day's fund balance and trying to pay the bills. And so we put some caveats in there for those kind of situations that come about. We had one more wanting to speak here for the committee. And then that'll be all the testimony from the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Chip Copeland. I'm with Schnitzer Steel Industries. Here on behalf of the Georgia Recyclers Association. As many of you know, Brian Hudson with the Hudson Group represents us and unfortunately had a conflict today. The Georgia Recyclers Association represents the for-profit recycling industry, which includes ferrous and non-ferrous metals, as well as tire and rubber recyclers. Just here today to express our full support for Senate Bill 516 as amended in this version. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of that? No. All right. We'll let you, we appreciate your testimony. I don't see any questions from the committee. Thank you. We will let you go back and close up here. And then the only thing I guess I would ask y'all to do, and I kind of want to do as well, is let's look at the period of time and say, is there some adjustment in that period of time that would make it? And let's look back at the original categories and make sure, since I did sponsor the constitutional amendment, let's use it for those categories we said we were going to use it for, which I think we are. And then see from there. It sounds like there is unanimous agreement from everybody on the going to the wholesaler level. I still personally wish the Department of Revenue would do this, but that's another issue. And as he said, they're not in the collection business. And then, you know, this other second section, I think is where some of the concerns are. Did you have a question first? Or?
I wanted to make a comment and a question combined if I could, and I guess it goes to you and Karen, you know, just for clarification, the DOT does not require rubber-based asphalt. They're not mandating it. And I want to make sure we don't lead into that direction because we're essentially would be subsidizing a competitor. The highway contractors currently use a lot of polymers in their asphalt. It's cheaper and it lasts longer. So the problem with rubber-based asphalt is it's more expensive to put down, and availability is an issue. So I'm not speaking against your bill. I just want to make sure we're clear that we're not trying to push towards some kind of a mandate that you have to use a certain amount of rubber in our road projects. We got the Highway Contractors Association here today. DOT is not here. We need to make sure we approach that delicately.
My goal that comes anywhere near that is some high school student coming up with an innovative idea where we can use maybe that technology or another technology that does not cost more. That is as close as we would ever get to anything like that. But my intent is to get every used tire in the state of Georgia out of people's yards, out of the woods where I am and where I like to walk and take my family, and to make sure that it's properly disposed of, whether that's being mulched up and used in a playground somewhere here in Georgia or being used as fuel. There's a lot of opportunities to use these tires.
Well, the DOT contractors do have that option. They can use it now.
Correct.
It's price drives the decision for them. So,
Right.
But thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate
Okay,
it.
anything you guys want to close up? Wrap up?
I hate speaking of Kevin with him sitting behind me because I don't want to be rude, but he did come to my office and we did have some conversations, and we did have and I'll be clear, we had a spirited conversation because to go towards Senator Orrock's statements is, first of all, if we laid the percentages out just by moving it from the retailer to the wholesaler, then every one of those categories, they're going to have more money to work with. But when the citizens went and voted on the constitutional amendment of where this $1 went to, citizens were educated, and I charged a campaign in my community to get individuals to go out and support this amendment also, because the dollar should go to where the dollar is meant to go. What this dollar is not meant to do is to prop up those in corporate America who choose to make products only concerned with the birth of the product and not the death of the product. As I drive up and down the highway going back and forth from Atlanta to Catawba, Georgia, I see a lot more other products strewn along the side of the highway than I do abandoned tires. And my concern is, if our corporate partners are so concerned about recycling and keeping our places clean, then they need to think about that when they are creating that product and build in the cost into that product, or pass that cost in revenue to the state so that we can go out and address that. The responsibility of the state to clean up tires, I wish it wasn't our responsibility, but it is. But when we have concerned corporate partners, and when we have friends like Kevin, who is very involved in keeping Georgia beautiful and has the ear of some of those industry groups, that they could come up with a plan where they could legitimately be partners with us in this and not have to lean 100% on a dollar that the citizens approved for to be primarily used, whether that number is the 80% that currently I've been provided for by EPD, or the 84% that he sees now, or any other percentage point. Because I can promise you that even though waste reduction and litter education right now is at 5%, when we start collecting from the wholesaler, that 5% is going to be a much larger 5% once we get there. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you were also the primary sponsor of surprise billing also, right?
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
All right, any other comments from the committee? I'm not sure how surprise billing fits into it, but,
It's just that you've mentioned it to me once or twice.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Let me,
This might be a good time for you to change the collection from EP, environmental protection to.
Well, let me have a conversation with them before we do
Yeah.
that, because I don't think they were too excited about that. I don't know if going down to the wholesalers would change their mind or not, but
I think it's infrastructure. EPD has done an incredible job of building out this online portal to allow them to come in. For DOR to do that, DOR was have to start at the bottom and build their infrastructure, which they currently do not have. This would be more than just a line item add-in on their software. So at this point right now, is the way we were looking at it, it seems since EPD,
As long as you've exhausted.
yes, sir, we have.
Prospect.
EPD has
Thank
done
you.
a great job on that.
all right. Go
If,
ahead.
if I may, you've given me so much time and I'm really delighted to be here. So thank you for allowing me just a few more moments. I want to clear up a little bit of confusion. And those of you who know me know that I'm a geek. So I've spent, well, first of all, we're talking about tires and asphalt. So I'm already super excited. I've also spent a lot of time with the underlying code. And I just want us to be on the same page. So the purposes of the Solid Waste Trust Fund are not 9, they're 5. They're codified now in the language that 511 has codified as of July of this year. And those 5 purposes are, most of them landfills, emergency action as it relates to toxic releases that might endanger the public health. And those toxic releases can be from tire piles that are on fire, or it can be from landfills that are in crisis. Number 2 is abandoned landfills. Number 3 is ongoing post-closure care that is required after an abandoned landfill is closed. So those three purposes are all about landfills. Number 4 is scrap tire management. And number 5 is the state grant program that is available to local governments, as well as a recycling market development council, which apparently doesn't exist anymore. Nevertheless, it is the state grant program that has allowable uses, and that is where recycling is located. In the list of allowable uses for the state grant program, which can be made by the Solid Waste Trust Fund, you have things like cleaning up solid waste disposal facilities, enforcement programs to prevent dumping, innovative tech for recycling and reuse of solid waste, grants and loans without specification. That's kind of interesting. And then also education and other efforts around recycling and waste reduction. So I just want to be clear that the purposes are 5, and they're primarily landfills, with scrap tire being number 4, and then the state grant program being number 5. The other thing I wanted to say, just in response to your question, which was so well informed, and I really appreciate it. Seriously, you can modify asphalt in 3 different ways: latex, rubber, and polymer. The state DOT has a specification for rubber modified asphalt at the 10% level, which is not really 10%. It's like kind of around 10%, which is great. This is all about choice, and it's all about what drives the market. Sometimes the market is driven to polymer because guess what? Polymer is related to the oil and gas industry. And when oil and gas prices are super low, polymer is super inexpensive, not cheap, inexpensive. Tires stay at the same supply level year after year. Every year, every American generates about 1 scrap tire, which means that the state of Georgia is generating about 10 million scrap tires every year. And nationally, we're generating about 260 million scrap tires every year. So what that means, I'm telling you what that means, just stay with me. What that means is that rubber modified asphalt, the rubber to modify the asphalt is cost constant. And polymer fluctuates like this. And that's why we want choice in the asphalt and road contractor market. And this bill has nothing to do with that
All right,
choice.
and we're not going to have anything else
That's
because
right.
we're into somebody else's, another committee's time, but
Thank you.
Yeah. No doubt, because I was going to say, I've learned more from your testimony than I've learned from anybody in the finance committee in a long time. But I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But here's the thing. Let's get order here. We're going to vote on this on another day. We can have comments at that time. Right now, we may meet on Friday afternoon, and we might meet Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. As we're off Monday. I'm kind of disappointed we're not here on Monday, but I'm not sure I could get a quorum here. on that day. If I could, I would meet on Monday. So we will have a meeting and go through all this and make sure we're crystal clear on the flow of everything. And we're gonna deal with,
And
we're
we'll
gonna deal
clear
with
that
that.
up.
I got to get out of this room and give this committee their
clear that up.
spot, and we'll deal with that. I don't think that David Cook has found me a spot for Tuesday afternoon. So if he could, I'd rather do that. Thank y'all for being.